Hello everyone, welcome you all. So in this video, I'm going to explain about encapsulation in Python. Encapsulation in Python. So let us see what is encapsulation. So what is encapsulation? So in an object-oriented Python program, so you can restrict the access to the methods and variables. So this can prevent the data from being modified by accident and is known as encapsulation. And encapsulation can be achieved using a private variables and private methods. So encapsulation means we can just wrapping up variables and methods. We can just restrict the scope of the variables and methods. Okay, that's called as encapsulation. So this can be achieved by specifying a variable or methods are private. But how we can specify them as a private? So in Python, in other languages we have a private keyword, but here we can specify method or variable as a private by specifying the two underscores in front of the variable and in front of the method. Now let us see how we can do this encapsulation with some examples. Okay. Now as I said, encapsulation can be achieved by using private variables and methods, right? Now when I see if I create a variable or method as a private, and what is the scope level? Suppose if I have a methods, public means if I don't say private, okay, if I don't specify the underscore, private is nothing but underscore underscore. In Python format, if you specify any variable or method is a private, we have to say underscore underscore. If I don't specify underscore underscore, that will be treated as a public method. Okay. So public methods means general methods accessible from anywhere. We don't have any restriction for that, but especially for private methods accessible only in their own class. Okay, and these private methods will start with the two underscores, underscore underscore, and private methods we can access only within the class. Outside of the class we cannot access. Similarly, public variables can be accessible from anywhere. That means public we don't have any issue, we can access for anywhere. Only the private variables and private methods, private methods can be accessible only within the class, only within the class. Now let us see how we can do this practically. Let me open my Python. So here I will create a new file, new Python file. I will name it as a encapsulation. I will name it as encapsulation. So now here encapsulation we can achieve by using private variables and private methods. So let us see one example. So as I say, first point, private variables can be accessed only within the method. So private variables, this is the first example. So private variables can be accessed only within the method, only within the method. Now let us see how we can do that. So let me create one class. I will name it as a my class, right? So in this class I will create a private variable. So how to create a private variable? Underscore underscore, and variable name is, let's say, a, and I'll put some number here. This is called as a private variable. So what is the scope of this variable? Only within the class, only within the class. Now along with this variable I will also create one method within the class. Let's say display, and here in this method I will just print the value of this variable. Now here how to write print statement? Print. So how we can access the class variable, how we can refer the class variable? By using self keyword, right? Self dot, what is a variable? Underscore underscore a. Because it is a private variable we have to call always underscore underscore. Okay, so now this will print the value of this variable. So why we have specified self here? Because this is a class variable. If it is a local variable we can directly print here, but it is a class variable, so that we have to use self keyword here. Now here, after creating this method, let me create an object for this class. Obj is equal to, I will create an object for this class. Now observe this. I will just call this method by display method, obj.display. obj.display. So will it print or not? So it should print. Why? Because when I say obj.display method, it will call this function or method. Internally we return print statement, right? So this method is a part of this class or not? So this method is also part of this class. So this variable can be accessed within the class. So method is also part of this class. So this method is directly able to access this variable value. So we can just run this, you will get exact value. So here we don't have any problem because this variable is in the class, method is also in the same class. Now I have called this method using an object, so it is able to call perfectly right. Now I'm trying to access this variable outside of the class. Outside of the class. How we can access this variable outside of the class? So I will directly use print, and which class this variable is created? Inside the my class, right? So how we can call this one? Class name, let's say my class dot underscore underscore a. So this is how we need to call. So if it is a public variable, we don't have any issue, so we can directly access this variable by using this class. All right, but because of this is a private variable, we cannot directly access this outside of the class. Currently we are in outside of the class, right? So my class is my class name, underscore underscore a is a variable name. Now when I run this code, see, now this value is provided by this one, but the second time when I call this, it is giving an error. What error it is giving? Attribute error. Type object my class has no attribute underscore underscore a. That means we are not able to access this. Why? Because this is a private variable. As I said before, private variables are limited to this particular class. Only within the class we can access. Outside of the class we cannot access. So here we cannot access because it is private variable. This is a private variable. How we can make it a private? With underscore underscore. All right. So when I say variable as underscore underscore, that will be treated as a private variable, and that variable can be accessed only within the class. Outside of the class we cannot access, right? And similarly I will also show you private methods. So let me just remove this example. So I will create one more example. So this example I'll show you private methods can be accessed only within the method. Again, it's just like a private variables. Private variables can be accessed only within the class. Outside of the class we cannot access. Similarly, private methods also can be accessed only within the class. Outside of the class we cannot access because that is a private. Now what I can do is I will create one more class. I will name it as a my class. Okay, this is my class. Inside this I will create one function, one method, def underscore underscore. How to create a method, private method, underscore 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 underscore. I will just say display one. Okay, display one, and it will take self keyword, and here I will just print this is a display one method, right? So this is display one method. This is a display one method. So as soon as I say underscore underscore here, this method becomes a private method. Remember this. I'm just writing the comment. This is private method. This is a private method. This is a private method. Now along with this, I will also create one more method that is a public, that is not private, because I need one more method to access this method, because this method we cannot access outside of the class. But how we can access this method inside of the class? At least we should have one more method which is public, and then we can call this method within the method. Let me show you. So here I will create one more method. Let's say def display 2. This is not private method. Okay, so inside this method I will write some message, and this is display 2 method. This is display 2 method. Alright, so now I have just created some message. Now you can see here in this class I have two methods I have defined. The first method is a completely private method, underscore underscore I defined, and the second method is normal public method. But as I said, this method can be accessible only within the class, means I should have one more method which will call this method, right? So I already have display 2. In this method itself I will call the private method. I will call this private method. How to call this private method from here? How to call this private method here? So this method is belongs to class, right? How we can access this class method? Again, we have to use self keyword. Remember this always. Whenever we want to access any variable which is under class, we have to specify the self. So always we have to refer class variables and class methods with the self keyword. So self dot underscore underscore display one. So this is how we need to call. So the same method I am calling from the second method. Okay, so both the methods are in the same class. So display 2 method easily can access the first method. Okay, now I call this method. Now come out from the class. So which class I need to execute now? I need to call the first method. I cannot call. I can still call the first method by using an object. Okay, let me just show you. Here I will create an object for my class. Okay, my class. Now let's see. Obj dot. When I say obj dot, can we call display one method here? There is a private method. Yes, we can still call display one method. Can we call display one method? So this is a private method, right? So even though it is a private method, can we call from the outside object we created, right? So through object, can we call this private method? Let's see. So obj dot underscore underscore, right? So disp one method, right? So I'll just call here. So obj dot underscore underscore disp one. This is a private method. I'm just calling like this underscore underscore disp method. Can we call like this? Let's run this code and see. Is giving an error. My class object no attribute underscore disp one. So we cannot access this directly from the object itself because this is a completely private. Within the class only we can access. So here object is itself is outside of the class, right? We cannot access this. But can we access the disp2 method? Yes, we can access. So now when I access disp2 method, what happens? Disp2 method. So when I access disp2, right? So now what happens? Obj I just created for my class object. I'm just calling the disp2 method. So disp2 method. So what happens now? Disp2 method will be called here. First it will print this message, and after that internally it will call disp1 method. Okay, disp2 can call this method, right? Disp1, because disp2 and disp1 both are there in the same class. So disp1 is a private, can be accessed within the disp2 itself. So when I run this, again we are getting issue attribute my class object has no attribute underscore disp1. Let's see what is the issue here. Oh, sorry, here I have made underscore underscore. This is wrong because disp2 is not a private method, right? So disp2 is a not normal method, it's a normal method. So we can directly call disp2 from this object. So now let's run this. Now we can see we are getting two outputs. So when I call disp2 method, first it will call here. So first it will print disp2 method. So it is printed here. And again in the disp2 method, internally we call display1 method. So it will go up and call this. It is possible here because disp1 is a private method. It can be accessed within the disp2 itself. Again because disp2 is also part of the same class. But outside of the class we cannot access. Outside of the class we cannot, as I said before, obj dot underscore underscore disp1 is not possible because outside of the class we are calling here. This is not correct. This is a not correct one. Okay, sorry. This is a hash symbol. This is not correct. But still we can call this. Okay, this is we can call this. So this is how we can create a private methods. So private methods on private variables. So we have seen two examples. So one is for private variables can be accessed only within the class, and also I have shown you private methods. Those methods also can be accessed only within the class. Only within the class. Now I'll show you one more example. So in these two examples, what we understood is we have come to one conclusion that private variables and private methods we cannot directly access outside of the class. Only within the class we are able to access. But there is one more scenario where we can still access class variables, private variables by using some methods. Okay, I'll show you alternative way of accessing the private variables. So let me just create one more example. So what I'm saying is we can access private variables outside of the class if class outside of the class, right? Outside of the class, indirectly using methods. Indirectly using method. We can access private variables outside of the class indirectly. It is not direct access, I'm saying. Okay, but using some methods we can access. Let us see how we can do that. I will create one class called as a my class, and inside the class I will create a one private variable. I will name it as a emp id, and by default I will give one value to this. This is a emp id. Along with variable, I will also create one method display get emp id. Let's say get emp id is my method, and self, and this method will take emp id from outside. We'll pass this id later, and inside what I will do is whatever id I'm getting, I will assign this id to the existing variable. Okay, how we can do that? How we can access this variable inside the method? Can be accessed, right? Because this is a private variable, this method is also part of the same class, so we can access this variable directly. How we can access? By using self keyword, because this variable is belongs to the class. So always class variables we can access by using self keyword. So that I can say self dot underscore underscore empid is equal to eid I'm assigning. Whatever value you are getting, I'm assigning this. So this is the one method I created. Now I will create one more method, def, okay, and display emp id. For displaying emp id, I'm creating one more method. So here I will just print the emp id. Let's say print. How we can print this value emp id? Again self, right? Self dot underscore underscore emp id. So one method will get the emp id from the outside and it will reassign the value. Whatever value already existed, it will reassign the value, and the other method will print the value of emp id. Okay, now we can see in the before examples I have shown you, we cannot access these private variables outside of the class. Outside of the class we cannot access, right? But still now I can access this variable value outside of the class through objects. So let me just show you how we can do that. I will create an object for my class. I will create an object for my class. So for this object, using this object variable, I can call this method, right? Get emp id, because this is a not private. Both are normal methods, not private. So get emp method id, get emp id I can call, right? And I will just pass emp id as a 102 now. Now what happens here? What happens here when I say obj.get emp id, or okay, so we will see this scenario later. For now, what I can do is I will just call emp id, display emp id. Let's say obj.display emp id. Now what happens? So when I say obj.display emp id, from this object it will call this method, right? The second method will be called. What the second method will do? It will print the value of emp id. It will print the value of emp id, right? When I run this, it will give you 101. So what I have done here, I'm indirectly accessed this variable outside of the class, right? So I have indirectly accessed this private variable outside of the class. How am I accessed? Through this method. Even though if you have an object, we can directly, if we don't have this method, we cannot directly access this. But to access this, I have just created one method, and this method internally can access, because this is a private variable. This method is again belongs to the same class. So this method can access directly this variable. But this method I can call from the outside of the class through object. All right. So now what happens is, it happens like this. So first we have called this empty, right? So this will call this method first. Display emp id self, it will call. Now internally what I'm saying here, I'm referring this variable here, right? So now it is printed exactly 101. So this is how it will work. Okay. So this is indirect process. We are not directly accessing this variable. We are going to calling the method, and method will call this variable. All right. So this is how it will run. Now I'll show you one more. Suppose if when I pass some value here, so before displaying the value, I will also call this get emp id method. By using obj, I want to change the value of emp id now. Even though it is a private variable, I can change that value indirectly from outside of the class. So obj dot get emp id, I will just make it as a 105. So now what happens? Now what happens? This method get emp id method directly call this one, and whatever value we are assigned, the value will be assigned to the EID. So it will become 105. Now internally what happens now? This will refer the class variable, right? Self.empid referring the class variable. The new ID will be assigned to this one. Now what happens is, the class variable value default is 101. Now we have passed a new value. The new value will be assigned to this variable. Now current value of empid is 105. Okay, it becomes 105 now. What happened now? Immediately I call the print method. So it will call this method. Again, it will refer the same class variable. Now currently the class variable empid value is 105. So now we will get the 105. Okay, so this is how it will execute. Now let us see Let me just execute this and see. Run as, so 105. So 105 means it is able to successfully, we have modified this value and we are getting the updated value. So this example is this is an example for how we can modify the private variable which is there in the class, inside the class. Indirectly we are doing it. Remember this, indirectly we are updating this. So we are able to access the private variables outside of the class by using a method. Okay, so these are all a few examples of encapsulation. So private variables and private methods we cannot access outside of the class. Only within the class we can access. If still want to access outside of the class, we have to create a methods, and using these methods we can access them. Using these methods we can access them. All right. So this is a concept of encapsulation. Alright, so that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel to get more updates on this. Thank you all.